I realize this is one of my favorite phrases I use in training courses. Yes, nowadays I do quite a bit of training. And when I say welcome back, people will normally think, oh my goodness, this is nearly there. We are nearly towards the end of the day, nearly there. I understand the feeling. Another thing is, these training courses are probably too short in time duration. And it is impossible for any one of us, including me back then, to understand all the key elements in NEC 4. This is just impossible. Just information is just too intensive. And therefore, I've got an idea to put these key elements, these key concepts back to this YouTube channel for us to revisit and to refresh, just to let us move on for our daily work in contract management. Or if you are doing the assessment, you may find this very helpful for you to refresh your memories. So let's do it. Let's do it in the coming few video clips that I'm going to upload. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how to say no. By that, I mean how to say no by a project manager to the notification of a compensation event by the contractor. So we need to understand the process of a compensation event. It normally occurs by having an event, and the contractor or the project manager needs to understand whether this is possibly a compensation event or not. Say if it's a contractor, he or she thinks this is a compensation event, then he or she needs to notify a compensation event. By how? By a notification. In what manner? Separately. To whom? To the project manager. For what? For acceptance. Then what? Then the project manager needs to, within 1 week, if that is not extended, to say no. So that is the basic concept of one of the very first steps of a compensation event process. So once again, a contractor notifies a compensation event separately to the project manager for acceptance, and within 1 week, the project manager needs to say no. There are 5 ways to say no to a contractor notification compensation event. This is what we are talking about here. How to say no. There are 5 fingers in our hand, and therefore there are 5 ways to say no to the notification of compensation events. So the clause here is clause 61.4. If you want to go to have a look, let's go to page 20 of the contract together. And then I will read some part of the clause out, and I will elaborate a little bit, and allow me later on to show you on the screen some of the key elements in there, and then I can explain a little bit. So clause 61.4, go with me to page 20 of the contract. It says in the middle, it says, if the event arises from a fault of the contractor, has not happened or is not expected to happen, has not been notified within the timescales set out in these conditions of contract, has no effect upon defined cost completion or meeting a key date, or is not one of the compensation events stated in the contract. So how to memorize? So perhaps this is a good time for me to show up the white screen here or the whiteboard here. I will see if this Zoom whiteboard works. So let me show that up. There are 5 ways to say no, and I've got some easy way to memorize all these. And let me elaborate a little bit. So hopefully it's on the screen here. So, okay, it's on the screen here. Whether it is the fault of the contractor, if it is the fault of the contractor, of course you do not compensate the contractor. Of course you will say no as a notification of compensation event. So fault of the contractor, has it happened at all? If it has not happened, then why will you compensate the contractor? Of course you will say no. Then time scale here, the third element. We are talking about the 8 weeks. The 8 weeks within which the contractor needs to notify compensation event. Starting from when? As soon as he or she becomes aware of that event being a compensation event. So that 8 weeks is what we call a time bar. Simply is a deadline. If the contractor misses that 8 weeks as a deadline, then the project manager will say, I'm sorry, this is a no. This is not a compensation event because you miss out that time bar. The effect of the compensation event on what? Upon the defined cost, completion, and meeting a key date. If there is no effect, then under the contract, the project manager will say, let's not waste time. There is no effect. So I will say no to this notification of the event being a compensation event. And the last element, obviously, whether it is a compensation event or not, as stated in the contract. We can go to clause 60.1, for example, the classic clause in NEC 4, clause 60.1, and we need to go to the secondary option sometimes and check whether that event is one of those compensation events. Sometimes in some main options, for example, option B, you have clause 60.4 to clause 60.6. Option D as well, the same. So whether this is a compensation event, if it is not, obviously you will say no to this notification. How to memorize? You fetch it. F-E-T-C-H. You fetch the information, whether this is a fault of the contractor, the effect of that event, the timing, 8 weeks, whether it is a compensation event or not, the C here, and whether it has happened at all. So this is the short form, the acronyms that I use many times when I share my contract knowledge in those training sections. You fetch it. Then what? Now, the project manager fetches the information and he says no. What if the project manager does not do so? He simply stays silent. Then what will happen? What will happen is what we call the deemed acceptance clause. There are 5 deemed acceptance clauses in NEC 4. There are 3 deemed acceptance clauses in NEC 3. So NEC 4, there are 5. This is one of them. The deemed acceptance element is still under clause 61.4. So let me read things through and then I will explain a little bit through this video. It is also on under clause 61.4 on page 20. So if you go to the last paragraph with me, it says, if the project manager fails to reply to the contractor's notification of a compensation event within the time allowed, the contractor may notify the project manager of that failure. If the failure continues for further 2 weeks after the contractor's notification, it is treated as acceptance. So let's park here. It's very long, right? So let me break it down. First point, if the project manager fails to reply to the contractor's notification, so if this happens, then read on. The contractor may notify the project manager of that failure. That's the second point. May means may not. Now, this is from me, okay? What I mean is, may means may not. What do I mean? I mean, the contractor can choose to notify the project manager of that failure. He can choose not to notify at all. So if the contractor notifies the project manager of that failure, then we read on. If the contractor does not notify the project manager of that failure, then the rest does not exist. Why do I say so? The important thing is the word if. If we look into the next phrase that is coming up, it says, if the failure continues for further 2 weeks, then we read on. So this if here, sometimes we call that a condition precedent. If that condition applies, then you read on. If the condition doesn't apply, then you don't read on. If the contractor does not notify the project manager of that failure, we say that failure does not exist. If that failure does not exist contractually, then the next phrase does not apply. Let's say if the contractor notifies, then what? Then a further 2 weeks after the contractor's notification, it is treated as acceptance. So that's point 3 here. A further 2 weeks. Counting from when? Counting from the contractor's notification. What if the contractor does not notify? If the contractor does not notify, then the rest of the clause will not apply. Then things will tend to drag on. But if we think about this, it is to the interest of the contractor to notify. So sometime or another, the contractor will eventually notify of that failure. And in that case, counting from the contractor's notification, the date of the notification, you count 2 weeks. If the project manager still hasn't replied, then the notification of the compensation event will be deemed as accepted, which means the event will become a compensation event. And an instruction will be deemed to have been given to submit quotation by the contractor. So that is the concept of deemed acceptance in NEC 4. This is just one of them, but actually all the 5 deemed acceptance clauses work in the same principle. So if you understand this one, the other 4 will be very easy. So I hope this is useful for you. Another key point here is that 1 week to say no by the project manager can be extended. Now, I'm not going into that area, but let's remind ourselves, 1 week to say no, 3 weeks for the contractor to submit quotation, and 2 weeks for the project manager to assess. All these 3 periods can be extended. How to memorize? 1 week to say no, 1 song. No, 1 song. Quotation, 3 weeks, 3 song. Quotation, assess. But the project manager assess or decide 2 songs, 2 weeks. So that's how I memorize. Now, some of you may realize I've talked about this in the training sections. These are the catchy phrases I used for us to memorize all these, because sometimes the client just phones you up and then you can't say, hold on, let me check. That is not very professional, right? So we need to memorize some of the key elements of NEC 4. Also important for your work as a project manager, also important for your assessment. Why? Because you don't have time during assessment. So that is the key concepts here. I hope this is useful for you. If you like it, click the like button. And then I will realize, you like it, and I will make more similar videos. I realize sometimes some videos may be more popular, some videos may not be that popular, and then I fine-tune myself. So I'm not going to delete all those unpopular videos. I will just keep them there. But one thing for sure is this channel is going to be in English from this time onwards. It is beneficial to both the people in UK and also in Hong Kong. So I hope you like it. I will see you next time. Goodbye.